makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love. Oh, the wonders of his love.
Thanks. You know, I wrote that more contemplative tune for what's normally a very joyous sounding song because, because if I'm honest with you, sometimes life is really hard. And sometimes true biblical joy doesn't feel very jubilant. I've been thinking a lot over the past week and a half about the sinlessness of Christ. You realize nobody ever had a fuller expression of the joy of the Spirit, of the fruit of the Spirit, than Christ would have. So in other words, 100% of the fruit of the Spirit, 100% of the time. No one was ever more joyful than Jesus. And yet he was known as a man of sorrows. So somehow that tells me that joy and sorrow aren't necessarily antithetical. And that joy isn't necessarily found in the absence of sorrow or suffering in our lives. But maybe it's found when we begin to see the presence of God in the midst of the sorrow and the suffering of our lives. You know, that song says, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come." And joy comes when Christ comes, when he comes into our broken world, when he comes into our broken lives. My story has had more than its fair share of broken scenes. I've shared some of those with you already, and I often refer to them as the scarlet A's of my life. We talked about conceived in adultery, almost aborted, adopted into a difficult home. Well, there's another A, and it's this thing called abandonment. Later in her life, my mom's paranoia caused her to walk out of mine, with my dad doing nothing at all to stop it. Years after I'd come to Christ, married a great guy, had 2 beautiful kids, my mom kicked me to the curb, re-orphaned me in the dust, and just said she never wanted anything else to do with me. I'm an only child. She said she really never loved me and didn't want to see me again. You know, even knowing that clouded and confused thinking, which was tied into her mental illness, was involved in that, it's just not easy. It's not easy to hear those things. Abandonment is awful. Some of you may be dealing with abandonment tonight. Maybe it's not the abandonment of a mom or a dad, but maybe it's the abandonment of a spouse who broke his vows, or maybe a rebellious child, or maybe a friend. You know, during those very difficult days, as I sought to process what was happening, I spent a lot of time in the Psalms of Lament. And I love the Psalms of Lament because they remind me that it's okay as a Christian for me to cry and to cry out to my God. I particularly found comfort in Psalm 27, which says, "Though my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will take me in." And you know, the Lord has taken me in. He's been faithful to me, even when people have been faithless to me. He has loved me with an everlasting love. He has held me with an ever-present hand. My Redeemer has used things that could have made me bitter to somehow, by his grace, begin to make me better. Slowly, incrementally, not always obviously, particularly to my husband and my children, but slowly making me more and more like Jesus. He's used my being forsaken to help me understand what it means to be forgiven, and through that, what it means to be forgiving. The gift of grace I was actually able to give to my mom on her deathbed about 3 years ago. That's a story of grace all its own. You know, ladies, in all the scarlet scenes of my life, and of yours. There is a Savior. There is a good God who knows best what I need most. A God who has perfectly put the pen of providence to the page of my story. A gracious God who has come to bring joy in spite of my sorrowful circumstances. And how thankful I am that He has come in wondrous love, and that He holds my hand and He holds my heart.